featuring the best of SVG in dance, drama, and music. Out of Barbados, Nika Jones, Shem White, James Small, and Ariel Brathwaite. And featured guest artist coming straight out of Jamaica, Petra K. Pull up my shoes and hold me up. Get your tickets now for only $20 or pay $25 at the door. Sunday, April 27th at the Russell's Auditorium. It all begins at 6 p.m. You can't afford to miss this. SVG Gospel Fest is sponsored by Gecko Limited, EarlEnos.com, Century Insurance, SVG TCCU Limited, Island 6, Nice Radio, ESL Auto and Real Estate, LA Unique Upholstery, Pitmaster, Korean Divine Designs, Value Pack, A&J, the Russell's Auditorium, SVG Tires and General Services, Valley Investment, and VC3.
26 minutes on to 11 o'clock here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. You're locked on to WEFM 99.9, the clean fresh sound, and this is your It's Your Turn program. Remember, It's Your Turn is an interactive program, so the numbers to call are 457-9997 if you're calling from a local landline, 532-9997 if you're calling from a digital cell phone. You can also call us or send us a message on WhatsApp at 457-9997. The It's Your Turn program is being hosted by Mr. Cecil Ryan, Mr. Philbert, and Mr. Joel Providence. Good morning to you, Cecil.
Good morning to you, Karen, and good morning to all the listeners of WEFM, It's Your Turn in particular, and the listeners on Star FM, extension Garifuna Radio. We're very pleased to be with you this morning. We have, as usual in studio, my colleagues. Philbert?
Yes, good morning. Thank you. Good morning, Kieran. Good morning, Joel. And our guests, whom we will introduce now. It's good to be back on another edition of It's Your Turn. It's a beautiful Sunday in St. Vincent and Grenadines. And we invite you to listen, participate, and to get interactive. Joel?
Well, even if Joel makes his way to the microphone, he was just waiting to seat himself. We had a little feedback issue, and I think it's okay now. Our good technician in studio, always very knowledgeable and on the ball, according to our brother Chigga Ridge. So Joel, it's over to you.
Good morning, Cecil. Good morning, Pijan. Good morning, listeners. I feel as if I'm a guest on the program. Partly for the reason that these days I'm perhaps more out than in on a Sunday for a variety of reasons. My physical condition actually should have prevented me from being here today, but I said no. I was missed last week. I missed several times before, but I said let me make every effort to get here this morning. I look forward to the program. They have it's a very important program, but I guess as usual, we'll have discussions on a few preliminary matters prior to beginning the substantive topic for discussion.
Yeah. Did you get caught in the traffic this morning, Joel?
No.
At Arnorsville?
No.
Oh, you're lucky. I got held up there for a long time. CWS is doing some work, I think. Maintenance work, and the traffic was held up for a good bit. All right. So we are here this morning to discuss a very important topic. We're going to be discussing when we get started on the main event. We're going to be having an update on the progress at the Kingsong Modernization Project, Kingsong Port Modernization Project. And we have to lead that discussion this morning two very distinguished persons. We have Linsky Douglas, who is the coordinator of the project. And if I'm wrong, Lindsay, you'd correct me when you come on later. And we have also Minister Brong. She's supposed to be in with us. We have baptized her as a regular member of our team here in studio, our Isiotan team. She's not here yet, and she will be here shortly, I'm sure. So in the meantime, as usual, we have some preliminaries, and even before I allow Joel and Pijan to come in, just want to say on behalf of the Consul General in Toronto, we have, there's going to be, let me get it and read what it says. Consul General Huggins has asked me to share with our listeners that it says, yeah, I'm trying to, okay, right. Home is where the heart is, actually, at the very top left. It's hard to read a little bit. Home is where the heart is, and it's Invest SVG. Toronto, we are coming. And SVG is coming, sorry, it's Invest SVG is coming to Toronto on I'll come back to the date, but they're coming, oh yes, they're coming on Saturday, May 10. Saturday, May 10, and they have a discussion going between 6 p.m. and 10 p.m. And they would be at the Tropicana Community Services Center, 1385 Huntington Wood Drive, Scarborough. So let me read again, SVG Invest SVG, coming to Toronto to talk about possibilities, investment possibilities. And we have on that team people from the Bank of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the Minister of Finance. Looking to see who else is there. Of course, you have the folks from the Invest SVG itself. So they would be there. They'll be at the Tropicana Community Services Center on May 10 the program starts at 6 and goes until 10 p.m. And the Tropicana Community Services Center is at 1385 Hunting Wood Drive, Scarborough, and that's in Toronto, of course. So, again, the key players would be the Bank of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. They will be there. Somebody from Foreign Affairs will be there. National Properties will be there, and more, of course, as I said, the folks from Invest SVG itself and Minister Gonzalez, Finance Minister, will be there. He would be the featured speaker. So Toronto, big things in store for you, and Consul General. I'm sure that's going to be keeping you very busy. You may not even have time to be part of our discussion this morning. I hope you have time anyway. I'm sure you're going to find time. All right, so that was that. Just to remind our listeners also that I promised that tomorrow would be the funeral of the late Mrs. Mason, Sharon Mason's mother, Sharon and John Mason, their mother, be tomorrow. So I just want to remind persons of that.
Kathleen
later on.
Mason. Kathleen.
Oh, yes. Yeah. And the middle name is Kip. I know it's Kip, it's pronounced as Kip, but I don't remember the middle name. Anyway, we'll get to it. Yeah, I have it here. And I understand, folks, that Rafi King would be, his funeral is today, happening today at this Adventist church uptown. So persons who are listening and wish to support, that's the information we have and we're sharing with you. So we are glad to get that out of the way. So,
Well, Cecil, before we go, just to remember the passing of Pope Francis and extend condolences to the Catholic community.
fair enough.
Very important.
Yeah, he was buried yesterday.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, very important. Okay. Yes, so it's Catherine Isabel Mason, Rashad Kip. And so tomorrow, home going service will be tomorrow. It's Monday 28, 11 a.m. at the Kingston Methodist Church. So there you go. Yeah. I know you have some issues to raise, Joel. I didn't want to preempt your issues with some kind of saddish news, but it's part of life. Living. So, Philbert, do you have any issue? Philbert doesn't.
Okay.
Bear in mind,
All right.
bear in mind, we have to give another time to the main event. Yeah.
Yeah, but these are also quite important. And we will have more than sufficient time to ventilate on the issue of the port. And I know that Lenski is very articulate, the minister is quite articulate, and will be able to cover the issues. I think I saw in a newspaper article as well where Lenski would have indicated that it's a forum. This will be a forum through which persons can actually call in as well.
Well, it's always so, we always invite people to call.
So I saw that in paper. So I think let me just get through these things rather than but they are important. But I'm leaving St. Vincent and the Grenadines for the time being. I'm going to Trinidad. Right? And there are two events that I want to talk about in Trinidad. One takes place tomorrow, and one took place last weekend, Easter weekend. The one tomorrow, as 99% of the population of St. Vincent and Grenadines knows, has to do with the general elections which are taking place in Trinidad. And it seems to me that what is certain is the uncertainty of the likely result of the elections in Trinidad. Tomorrow, there are 41 constituencies, and I've seen predictions ranging from 23 to 18 in favor of the PNM to 22 in favor of the UNC. But it seems as if there's what seems to me, in speaking with Trinidadians, because I have been in touch with quite a few Trinidadians from all parts of Trinidad, and there seemed to be a high degree of anxiety among those persons who hitherto would have supported the PNM. And they believe that some persons, while they still have a passion for what is their party, is that they believe that their party has let them down, that they have not looked out for their interests sufficiently over time. But also there's some persons who argue, but the party has done a lot. They're free education, tertiary level, all sorts of training programs, business incubation programs, and the like, and so forth. And those persons who appear to be disenchanted are those persons who really just simply want to continue on the gravy train and get the handouts and so forth. And that the UNC is actually making the promise of more handouts and so forth. Now, it is what it is. What is unfortunate, and what was clear at one time was the difference between Trinidad and Tobago and Guyana. In Guyana, there was a clear divide between the key ethnic groups, those of East Indian extract and those of Afro-Guyanese extract. In Trinidad, it was not so glaring, but it seems as if it has reared its ugly head again, and there seems to be a clear division there that is likely to impact not only the results of the elections tomorrow, but also in terms of what life will be like or continue to be like in Trinidad and Tobago. What we should be concerned about, I prefer to say, is that if the leader of the UNC has expressed time and, if not disinterest, in the currency and the paramountcy of Caribbean integration. You may recall, Pijan and Cecil, that when the view was expressed about that Trinidad and Tobago will not continue to be the region's ATM. You may recall that. So we're hearing that there's an echo of, and I won't say echo chamber, but there's an echo of views that expressed higher up within this hemisphere about an echo of views about the importance of getting rid of certain programs that I think that favor those who are marginalized and who are struggling, dealing with immigration issues, and dealing with, it's almost as if there's a carbon copy of certain programs that are in place. And it's an area for concern, especially persons of Afro-Trinidadian descent. So let's see what happens tomorrow, and let us see how the rest of the Caribbean, as we look on, we'll see how things unfold. The other comment that I just wanted to make relates to the events of the Easter weekend, also in Trinidad, primarily at the Hazley Crawford Stadium in relation to the Carifta track and field games. I know as well that there were also at Carifta aquatic events where St. Vincent Grenadines would have obtained 6 medals, I think, and came 12th overall. But with regard to the track and field, that we failed to medal. And there were 20 odd countries participated, and we came we down there close to the bottom. But not only did we fail to medal, is that we had very few of our athletes making it to the finals, right? So it is something to raise. What I wanted to say is that it should not have been necessarily a surprise, because track and field, like cricket, is basically a sport that deals with numbers in terms of times or in terms of distance and so forth. And those of us who could have been monitoring other events, like inter-school sports, for example, in other islands, we would have been able to make the comparisons. I saw, for example, on YouTube, the inter-school sports in Grenada, and I figured that Grenada was likely to do well and so forth. What it is, I'm not here criticizing our young athletes. What basically I'm just saying, it is what all of us who have a role, a part to play in the development of track and field in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, have to come together and decide and say how we're going to have turnaround within 3 to 4 or 5 years. As soon as you begin to speak about success, we all embrace the success. When we speak about failure, as they say, failure is an orphan. And then we start to point fingers to whether it could be the issue of the track and field, the Athletic Association. It could be an issue of the Ministry of Education or the Ministry of Sports, or the Ministry of the problem with the school, the problem with the parents. We're blaming everybody, when recognizing that all of us together could do more, could have done more as we develop our infrastructure, as we develop programs. And I've seen programs in place, but we are no worse off than our colleagues in terms of our potential, athletic potential, colleagues in the neighboring islands. It's just that now we just have to ensure that we entrench a program that for the sake of the young people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and we don't start to say the fault is not with me, this fault is over there, and that kind of thing. All of us have to come together and say, for the sake of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, let us put our resources together, work together, and demonstrate teamwork and ensure that we turn this thing around.
Yeah. On the question of the elections in Trinidad, it's interesting. I watched the final campaign event for both parties, one last night and one 2 nights previously. There are differences, which I picked up, significant differences, but I don't want to go back to them now. But for me, it's just a question of wait and see the results on Monday, tomorrow. Yeah, I saw that the thing you just talked about, Joel, and I read an article in the newspaper where I think Chester Morgan was the person talking about that. He was blaming in a way the poor performance on the fact that there are differences in the format of the final, I don't know if it's inter-school, I think it was, selection process, where you were seeing
we were to have it in a contracted period, while another thing they have it over 3 days.
Yeah, but I'm not sure if that is really a substance.
Not fundamental to the issue.
If you're trained and prepared, then you're trained and prepared. Wherever you go to run, you go to run. If it's in Paris, if it's in Atlanta, wherever, you're trained and you're well prepared. The track, I think, is kind of just neutral. Not the track, I mean the format of the final selection. I mean, you have to be doing things. My comment, my own position is that when we hear into school and other preparation meets here in St. Vincent, and at least too well, we clap and we say, oh yeah, they're good. But that's when they're competing among themselves. When they go out and compete with other athletes, that's where the challenge comes. And I think we need to do better, definitely. As you said, the coaches, all the stakeholders need to come together and have a plan, and with clear goals and clear aims and objectives, And I think that's what has to be done. Training, a well-prepared training program. But it's unfortunate. And one young in St. Lucia, she ran the 1 and 200.
Fantastic.
And gold medals.
J.D. Emmanuel.
Yeah.
The times were excellent as well, both in the 100 and the 200.
So it must be that they have an approach.
St. Lucia?
St. Lucia.
Mm-hmm.
That's the Alred effect.
The what?
The Alred effect.
Alfred
effect. Yeah.
Could be. Yeah, you're right there too.
But to a degree, but Alfred effect, it was last year.
The coach made a very important point. He said that they don't have to go to Jamaica or United States to train.
They train at home.
Right at home.
That's the same thing. We have the facilities here where people can train at home.
But it's the program now.
It's a program.
It's a program, right?
It's a program.
And yes, and I would certainly like to believe that we have the talent, and I would suggest, I would suggest to the minister responsible for sport, just to see, because it's an inter-school sport that really drives the athletes who go to the Carifta Games. This is not like the Olympics and so on. It is really through the inter-school program. So I would suggest that between the minister responsible for sport and the minister responsible for education, get the heads of the National Athletic Association and coaches and so on, bring them together, have a retreat and discuss where we're going from here. and so on. And let us see if we can do it as quickly as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Somebody has to play the lead role in that respect. And as you say, the minister perhaps might want to consider himself as the person to play that role. It's important. Because he's going to come back next time again, next year, character in Grenada. I think it's going to be Grenada. Same performance. That's bad, man. That's poor. That's terrible. Anyway, they would do better. They would come together, as you're proposing, Joel, led by the minister, and they will have this meeting and have a plan, hopefully. All right. In the meantime, back to the main event. We have been joined by Beauty, Brain. What else can I say? Joel, you want to finish it? Youth, energy. I'm waiting on you guys to come in. Pijan, Joel.
Purpose,
vision, commitment.
You know, there's something we say in physics, and maybe Lenski might be able to bear me out on this, that it's all about creating value, right?
Mm-hmm.
And value comes when you can increase or efficiency with which you use the energy. Is when you can actually make the most of time and when you can make the most of distance. When you combine time reduction, distance reduction, or output, along with the energy, you get value being heightened. And I think...
well, we have all of that.
We have all of that.
All of that. We have all of that in the person of... Pichani, come here.
Yeah, well, I was saying class. Class.
Yes.
And specifically GHS and grammar school.
Okay. Substance.
Rare
quality.
GHS
and we're talking about...
Those are like the number 3 and number 4 schools.
Anyway, let me get no discussion no school balance.
Secondary school, go to grammar school or high school.
We're talking about the one and only Honorable Benava Brown, who is the Minister of Urban Affairs and Seaports. So, Minister Brown, good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen.
And welcome home. Welcome home.
Welcome home. Well, Mr. Providence, I've been holding the anchor for you here for
Actually.
Yeah, I was here for you last week, and now I'm here again. And according to what was your introduction, that means I've probably been here more than you in the past month.
The good thing about it is that I don't have to compensate you because...
I would like to say good morning to all your listeners, whether you're here or you're abroad, wherever in the world you might be. Good morning. My name is Benava Brown, and it's a pleasure to be here once again.
And we're happy that you have decided to join us this morning because, as you know, we're going to be dealing with a very important topic this morning. And that topic would be, the discussion on that topic would be led in part by, certainly illuminated by a solid member of the Port Modernization Project team. Actually, he has been on this program before, earlier this last year, I think he was. But we know of your credential. Well, first of all, let me introduce him as an engineer in his own right. We're talking about Mr. Linsky Douglas. Linsky, good morning and welcome again to the studios of WEFM, and the program is your hand.
Yeah, good morning, Mr. Ryan and Mr. Providence, P. John, Minister. Special morning to you. Thank you for having me.
We're happy that you've decided to share your morning, part of your afternoon with us on the program today. And we know it's going to be of benefit to all our listeners and followers, those who are listening through air and also Facebook here in Vinci and overseas. As I mentioned, Facebook. Tell us a bit about your training, your what's your background in terms of where you're studying and so on and so forth.
Right.
I just want to establish that you're not maybe you could tell me whether or not you're let me allow you to speak and then I'll come back.
All right. I'll start by saying my training and experience over the years probably made me in into a port development professional.
Okay.
My first degree is in civil with environmental engineering. My master's is in project management. I spent 11 years working directly with the Port Authority, in particular during the time when Mr. Providence was an active member of the board.
This Providence here? Okay.
And I've been on the port.
So you have to watch what you say.
No, not at all. Not at all.
That's what that was a
Yeah,
like kind of thing.
I've been on the port project since 2008. The public record would show that the active consultancy work started in 2009. But before you get to the point of selecting a consultant, someone has to be putting those pieces together. So that's my situation. Currently, I'm within the project implementation unit, which is a specific unit established under the Ministry of Urban Development with the sole task of monitoring, executing, managing the aspects with regards to the employer on the port modernization project, which is being executed through the contractor ACON and being supervised through the supervision consultant SELCON.
In your training, particularly as an engineer, was what I presume you had to study a lot of textbooks and so on, correct? Was Facebook one of those textbooks?
Facebook did not quite exist, and
You look.
I'll share this with you. I had a motivational chat with some students in a grade 4 class recently, and I explained to them that when we were growing up, we did not have the distraction of the social media, and they asked, wasn't life boring? But back then you were more focused to pay attention to reading, understanding, cipher, decipher, and to move things along in a structured way.
The reason I ask you that pointed question is because I'm aware, and I've been following a lot of discussions here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and some people seem to have used, are using Facebook as a main text for a number of different things. And once they've done that, they become specialists. They've become experts.
Well,
I just wanted to know.
It is being used, it is being encouraged, but I think what the trend now is that it is actually being platformed through mainstream media, established radio stations, established print. You know what I mean? There's nothing wrong with persons using Facebook for communicating purposes, but I think when it gets to the point of being platformed, then it enters into a pretty uncertain territory because
platform. You mean train? To me, I see it. Some people use it as a educational tool, as a reference, as training manual, which is good in a way. It can be in some instances, but some people over-reference it.
No, you can use social media for a reference, but you also have to be cautious with regards to your source of information. Cross-check the information that you're having with other sources also, because professionals can make professional comments on Facebook and so on. So it comes down to responsibility and the way how you consume the information. And I think
all right.
cross-checking for accuracy
okay.
is critical.
Just wanted to get these things out of the way. We come back now to the main event. Minister Brown, see they're smiling all.
No, I'm smiling because just maybe about 2 years ago, less than 2 years ago, I did a program. I sat on a panel. It was the retired teachers. I think it was the retired teachers. Yes, the retired teachers. They had a program, and the program was concentrated about social media and television and radio. Which one is having more impact on our society when it was TV and radio in the 60s. And on that program, I remember saying that right now we have this kind of unholy matrimony that's happening between social media and the traditional forms of media. And people are actually using the social media as the form of news. And sometimes that's how news gets out there, and that's how it's even touted, and that becomes a story. So that just made me laugh.
Okay.
Just that bit of commentary.
The port modernization project. Well, I would ask you, as Minister of Urban Affairs, and particularly responsibility for the port, to give us an update as to where we are. Can you? Tell us something that we know where we are in terms of the progress of its
So the port
construction?
project, the port project, it has been progressing. It's the second largest capital project. It's second to the Argyle International Airport. The I know Linsky plans to dive deep into this aspect of it.
Literally dive deep.
Yes, literally dive deep into the whole aspects of it,
Yes.
and I'm sure most of it will come out as we go further into the discussion and into more details. But the port project, it has a lot of significant importance to the development of St. Vincent and the Grenadines and the way that we're able to chart our future or our course for the future of moving forward. The port situation right now in St. Vincent is that we use, in terms of container ports, we balance between Kingstown and Camden Park, or that's the way it was prior to Beryl. And those infrastructures, the Kingstown port is 60 years old, while the Camden Park port was always built kind of small fits function, and we have outgrown that. So the port, the new modern port that has been developed, and it has taken a number of years. Preliminary studies have been done and done and done about this project. We have studied the ecological impact. Well, first we had site selections and whether it was even needed. That was the feasibility, and it was determined that it was needed. We have done site selections, we have done additional site scouting, and we have done as well social impact studies, environmental impact studies. We've taken into consideration climate change impacts and how that can impact the development of the port and the siting of the port. So a lot of work have gone into the development of the port. Linsky said he would have been working on the port since 2008. And somewhere along that journey, Linsky, I would have joined you maybe in 2014.
Yes.
I would have
As a
joined
member of our technical
of the technical committee, and back then the port, we had the preliminary studies that were done, and we were building up towards was going to become this port project. So I would have been working with the port since then, and I've been a part of the process since then. So I can tell you it has been a very long, in-depth studies have been done. And yeah, and I'm happy with the progress that we're seeing so far. We have seen the development or the expansion of Kingstown with the development of the new port site. And I'm very excited about the future of the port site and the opportunities that it has to offer Vincentians.
Any idea? Well, can you remind us, out of you, the cost of the project?
The cost of the port modernization
Yeah.
project as being executed to construct the cargo port, it's 667.8 million EC dollars.
What was the original figure? Because I believe I heard maybe 10 years ago, 8 years ago, something significantly lower than that.
Right. So as the project was developed, you move from concept to actual feasibility to construction. There would have been changes in the estimates for the project. When we concluded the concept development stage, the estimate was in the region of 100 million US, so 270 million EC. After that, we then brought in Selhorn through a joint venture with HPC Hamburg. HPC Hamburg being the port operations component to that joint venture. And then after doing actual work, as opposed to, let's say, desktop review, where we have done the site selection and a lease cost analysis to determine which of the options should be implemented, then the cost increase. If you would permit me just to
Yes, go. Yeah.
the approach in terms of
Yes,
site selection
yes.
and settling on the build construction of a new port in Kingston. Mott MacDonald during the concept
And the design, because I want to ask you about the design as well, but
Yes.
you can come back to that. I can deal with it in the same.
Yes. Maybe we can link the design when we get
Right.
to what I know would be
Okay, fine.
interesting discussion
Fine.
on the current issue of the port. But just for background, because we are close to the end of the construction phase of this project. We're much closer to the end than we were when I first came here 2 years ago. And I came here with Minister Francis to tell the nation, listen, we're going to be starting the construction and all that has been done. Then I came back when we had the issue of the land reclamation, when there was intense public debate as to whether we should be doing your dredging of material offshore Argyle, and now we're here today when we're just a few months off from the construction being completed. And then the government, through the minister and her cabinet and prime minister, will be looking at the issues of operationalization. So it's sometimes a pity that we still have to, let's say, be making the case as to justify the port. But at the stage of Mount McDonald,
No, but that's all part of the process.
Yes,
That's how things happen in St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Yeah.
So we kind of have to become accustomed to that.
Yeah.
It happened when Argyle International Airport was
it's
being built.
important for us to
It happened when the
continue.
bridge in across the Roberca Bridge was being constructed. It is now a part of the process.
And what is interesting about it is that you're still going to have skeptics even after
Always,
it's proven
always.
itself, because there's some people who still doubt whether or not the Argyle International Airport was necessary.
I know.
Yeah.
So yes, we take that and we go with it.
Yeah,
Basically.
So we would have under Mount McDonald, we would have studied the expansion of Camden Park. We have studied the expansion of Kingston. We would have studied the new construction. We would have studied an extension into Annisvale. As a matter of fact, a particular period of the project development at that stage was an amendment to that original consultant.
Just one clarification, Alinsky. When you say you've studied, you studied the feasibility of
site selection.
These sites.
Yes, so
yeah. So is the feasibility of extension or
yes,
whatever.
But the scope was to find the least cost
Right.
development option
Right. Okay.
for St. Vincent on a 50-year horizon.
Right. I just want to be clear so people who are listening
Yes.
would follow the logic of what you say. All right. Okay.
Yeah, so we would have looked into those sites, and the least cost option turned out to be the construction of Newport,
Mhm.
right? In what was referred to as an option C, right? And least cost in the sense that, it covers all of the needs of the country for over a 50-year horizon. It's climate resilient. It has an efficient layout, right? There was a benefit that was derived in that we will now have portlands released that can be used for redevelopment. Looking at the initial financial economics. So at that stage, Mott did their work that was at 100 million US. And then when you came in and you start doing the actual technical work, so you physically go and you do your bathymetric and your geotechnical and so on, and you start analyzing the actual site data after the cabinet would have approved that we proceed with option C. One of the first things we realized is that the charts that Mott used to estimate the water depth was different than actually what exists. So the bathymetry different.
So sorry, you said different in what sense?
Yeah, Mott's water depths were shallower
Okay.
than what actually exists.
Okay.
And you can understand over time, because these charts develop, and over time the geography of the Kingston Harbor would have changed for one reason or the other. That pushed the price up for the project up to $145 million, right? Then, at the end of the feasibility, the price got up to 185, because then you had to include issues of Newport equipment. We had to include mitigation measures for climate risk vulnerability, and energy efficiency, energy generation, and so on. Because these modern ports are no longer just a piece of infrastructure, because it also comes with social responsibility in terms of having to address your project affected persons.
You mean the on-land side of things?
Yeah.
No, but that's what you're talking
The
about.
hard and soft issues,
Yeah.
the physical infrastructure and all that goes with it in terms of modern port development. So the port project would have impacted residents in rural
Right.
cities.
That's what
We then
I'm
had
asking
to
about.
deal with them in a socially acceptable way to resettle them.
And you're talking about the resettlement of some 40 houses,
49
49
49
families
families in the Lomans area.
in the Lomans, yeah.
And 49, we had fisher folk, businesses, vendors that we also had to compensate. Persons may not recall now, but there was a line of vendors.
Well,
along-
remind. That's the purpose
there
of
was
this
a line of
program.
vendors along
Remind.
the reclamation site. I hear some persons talk about the blocking of the visibility of the.
Yeah, just
the
remind.
harbor.
Just
But,
remind.
The reclamation site where those vendors would have blocked that visibility a long time ago. We're just doing it now in a more, beautiful way. So the price went up, and then
there were also issues like the realignment of the CWSA
the
line,
sewer line and so on. Yes, that's a huge component too, because the CWSA current had a sewer line which passes through the proposed site footprint. It was age, the data, etc. You did not really have it to assess whether or not it would survive placing on your boat.
And that line facilitated the passage of sewage from people in Montrose and
Yes.
and
Throughout
that's
the
the area
Kingston area.
throughout the
yes.
Kingston
Throughout the
area,
Kingston
Yes.
area,
Okay.
and it's environmentally
and of course the
acceptable.
hospital as well.
Yes, it's an environmentally acceptable method, which is the disposal by dilution.
Okay.
Yes,
I have a question.
yes, Mr. Providence.
You look at you mentioned that the selection was based on a least cost analysis basis with a 50-year horizon.
Yes.
But some of the information that you were working with in terms of the selection was perhaps incorrect.
Yeah, well, as
At the beginning.
yeah,
right?
as you get more serious with the development work, the data has to become more site specific.
Right.
So when you're scouting, you tend to use a lot of desktop reviews and available information because you want to keep the investment, the study costs as low as possible, but you want to get a reflective outcome that would be able to guide the policymakers as to what would be the optimal way to go. Yeah.
I understand that,
Yes.
but would say would at any point say, well, okay, let us go back to option A or option B, or even if there's an option D as a result, or was it too late by that time when you had to add in these and take into consideration these other factors?
Well, considering the pros and cons matrix that came up for all of the options being studied, there are multiple different factors that would impact why you would not take a particular option beyond the increase in costs. Beyond the increase in costs.
I'm sorry. Could you just pull your mic up so we right
Sorry, I
as
don't want
close
this
as
to be
possible?
mocking my face.
No, it's all right. I know
Yes.
they could lower it a little bit,
Okay.
but speak
For
as close as possible so
For
we hear you.
example, Mr. Providence, if I could remember correctly from my back in the day when I was on the Port Modernization Committee, one of the issues with Annisvale was the depth, the water depth,
Mhm.
and how rough it was out there. So that that drove the cost, skyrocketed the cost.
Yeah, to construct a single pier with a 300-meter tunnel basin in Annisvale was coming in at over $200 million US. So Annisvale has its own technical feasibility issue. Camden Park has the issue with the restriction and the industrial growth to the back. Kingston, it's all aging infrastructure.
So Camden, in terms of its space, is the issue in Camden Park.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
The space both on land and also the Camden Park Harbor, it's much shallower than in Kingston.
Now, of course, you could have found other, if you had opted for Annisvale, you could have found other things that would drive up the cost as well.
Yes.
But 200 million US is 540 million EC
And
Yeah,
which
that
is-
was for a
that
single
point.
pair.
for single pair.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not for a port. That was actually for a cruise ship there.
Okay.
So Annisvale was never feasible for port containerized cargo terminal development because of the technical parameters in that area and the nature of construction that would be required.
I'm aware because I did read the Annisvale option.
Yeah.
I recognized all the challenges that Annisvale offered at the time.
Yeah, but what I want to get to is to why are we now at 600 plus million? When we were developing this project to go to bid, because you never would know the full cost of your construction requirements until the contractor gets involved. Now, the procurement processes does not allow for early engagement of contractors. You tend to have a hands-off approach with the contractor. Yeah, you tend to have a hands-off approach with the contractor when you're going through your procurement for obvious reasons, right? And when we, in the time when we were going to bid in 2019, 2020, we had multiple issues that would have been impacting the cost of construction. We had the COVID pandemic, so there was a lot of uncertainty globally as to what that means. We don't have to reflect on the lockdowns and the restriction to travel, and also the increase in the difficulties moving things logistically. And these are things that Mr. Providence would have been handling in one of his former occupation and would be well aware of. We then had the eruption of the Soufriere in 2021. We had issues of ELSA, we had issues of droughts. we also had the issue, all those issues in terms of uncertainty, either carry up the price of labor, fuel, material, steel, and also insurance. So when we went to bid at 100 and when we went to bid, the bids came in at a much higher price than the budget that the government had for the infrastructure works, right? That then means the government had to find additional resources, which they did, which was debated in Parliament and passed in July of 2022 after the commencement of the project. And that's the $62 million loan from Taiwan. Now, as of recently, there were two project profiles being circulated, one showing that the government contribution is 42 million, and another showing that the government contribution is 108 million. And the pundits are like, okay, the only change we see on this is a change in cost and a change in responsibility, right? But the government received $62 million from Taiwan, which is a huge contribution towards the construction of the port. But the way how that money was entered into the project, right? It was not entered as a separate contribution of Taiwan, but as a contribution of the government. So the increase from 42 million on the government part to $104 million, $104 million on the government part in the project profile simply accounts for the contribution to Taiwan. And
But can you spend a little bit, go back over that,
Yeah.
and make the clarification as with respect to the contribution to the government, as opposed to the project?
Yeah, well, any project that you do would have what is formally referred to as a counterpart contribution.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to be borrowing money to build a port. You get your monies from the funding agency, and they say you have to put up something too, and you also have to cover certain components of this project. When we went to bid, the initial component, the initial contribution that the government was to cover was $42 million. The bids came in, for the reasons explained, at a much higher. We selected the lowest of the two bids, and this information is publicly available. The second bid was about 15% higher than the one that we went with, negotiated, etc. So when the bids are in, you then had a budget for infrastructure that was less than the bid. So there was a deficit. That deficit plus other, considerations, contingencies, etc. The government then went for an additional $62 million.
From Taiwan?
And that was obtained from Taiwan.
Through loan finance.
Through loan financing, through the Exim Bank of Taiwan. So that amount then now was, instead of being reflected CDB, UKSIF, government, Taiwan, it reflected CDB, government, because the 62 is part of counterpart, which is the government responsibility. It reflected CDB, UKSIF, government. So the government part would have changed before bid from 42 million to 100 and
the British government's grant is
the equivalent of 32 million US.
Yeah, that clears up that, because people were mistaken in terms of understanding that. So.
The information is all publicly available. And,
well, it's good that you clear it up, because not everybody goes to the source. That's the point.
Sorry, you said it's publicly available, but available where?
Online. You just type it in funding for the port project, and it explains to you the different funding. It's $110 million from CDB. It's 110 plus from the CDB, 32 million from the UKSIF, $62 million from that was approved from Taiwan, and 42 million as the government's contribution. The project profile simply combines the Taiwan and the government, because the government borrowed the 62 million from Taiwan as to add to counterpart contribution, and that was done to cover the difference in the original estimate for your infrastructure work and what the contractor said it would cost. And that cost was done in a time of uncertainty where you had COVID, issues of volcano, which would impact different aspects, including insurance of the project. So there's nothing untoward with the numbers.
It's all right. You've given them, so they're there, and persons who have further interest can click on the site and get additional information there. In terms of I don't know, Minister, did you want to reinforce or clarify anything that Vince is?
No, I think he gave it sufficient clarity there.
Okay. I want to
maybe before you go to your next question, there are two more things I think that we need to clarify just for the purpose of the public record. Because on the issue of cost, there's also the narrative there that the government should not be spending $600 million on a port because there's a report.
Well, let me ask you, in answering that, let me add to that what you say. Why wasn't it considered to extend Kingston?
Yeah.
So if you could answer that.
In what I would say now, we'll cover all of that, right? So there's the public narrative by some commentators that the government could have simply spent $20 million and improve Kingston.
Yeah.
Now, Joel is aware of this report, and
okay.
I brought a copy of it because it was done in 2016.
It's all right. You refer to it, but
It's
people
not
would be
named,
able to.
but there's the report. It's the transforming the Caribbean port service industry towards the efficiency frontier.
So a study was done.
Yeah, this report was done as part of a regional study. It was published in about 2016 by the CDB, and it looked at what regional ports need to do to improve their efficiency in light of the expansion of the Panama Canal. Right? St. Vincent became a part of that study quite naturally. The study is not an engineering study; it was commissioned by an economics department. Right? So the scope of the study is not as wide and deep as a feasibility study will be. Right? But this report is being used to say the government could have simply done $20 million and meets its demand, right? The report has a horizon of up to 2025, where it projected the port would have been doing 23,000 TEUs, 20-foot equivalent unit of containers, right? Both Kingston and Camden Park. Now, we're in 2025 now, and last year the port did over 24,000 TEUs of container. So let's imagine the government took the $20 million, applied only these efficiency measures. Here we are in 2025, and the ports that we currently have would have been still at their limits.
It would have been maxed out.
And keep in mind, when I said we started this process in 2008. We started this process in 2008, and construction started in 2022.
So
it took us that window just to prepare a port project. So imagine today, in the context of after Beryl, where Port Kingston, about 60% of that kit is not functioning because it was damaged, right?
And we're talking about the old port.
The old port in Kingston.
Right, we need to say that.
Yes, and Port Camden Park. I looked at it this morning. You could see the congestion along with other structural issues for one reason or the other, you know? So imagine the position we would have been where the two existing ports, if you went on this study alone, would have been at their max and also challenge in terms of capacity.
And we would have now been starting to plan.
And now starting to plan, you know? But yeah.
As you making a point, well, even what is max, because you speak about ordinary operating capacity. Because sometimes there are occasions as well when you just simply have to cater for special events. Like I was in Dominica when Hurricane Maria, and recognized the challenge of recovery in Dominica just because of the limitations of the port facility in Roseau in Dominica. So we also have to take into consideration special events that could take place.
Yeah, and,
I mean, Mr. Providence, I could draw to the point you just ordinary Christmas traffic in the Camden Park port, the way that the containers are stacked sky high, they are looking
dangerously sky
they
high.
are looking for additional space because as the port is part of my mandate, and I make sure that every Christmas season I walk through, I speak to some of the workers, and they're working extremely hard. And you see just the amount of traffic that is flowing through. So you could imagine just time period. You're speaking about events, but I'm saying annually we would have to juggle what would have been the Christmas rush, and every year that's becoming worse and worse.
So right, so the determination of capacity is very, very crucial.
Yes.
And said not just ordinary, but the extraordinary as well.
Let me have the opportunity to get to your question, and I'm going to address the issue of why not expand Kingston.
Right.
With some numbers.
Right.
Right. And historical context, because the conversation on port development has not just started in 2024 or 2025. The challenges that the country will be facing goes way back. Right. I would have to read in this case because I want to make sure
as comfortable as you are.
That you have the points. Now, if we look back, the Port Kingston was constructed 1960 to 1964, right? It means that, and it was expanded in 1979 with the container park, which is that section just on the outside of the complex, right? Kingstown was constructed at a time when there was no containerization and there was no mechanization. And the original yard has only space for 200 TEUs. There was no ISPS, as in no security regulatory compliance requirements that the facilities had to meet, right? So that facility was in 1964, right? Port Camden Park, which opened office in 1993, thereabout, after being constructed, pretty much laid there. It received its first shipment of about 50 cars in 1996 and only became active as a port when Mr. Providence probably was part of the decision making that the Port Authority needs to transfer container operation to Camden Park around 2000, start doing it around 2006, 2007. And you got the crane mechanization on the quayside came in 2007 thereabout, when we received the crane, partly to ensure that the heavy equipment that was projected to be imported to deal with the construction of the airport could be efficiently removed, right? So that's timeline and functions, right? The government.
I just want to recognize, and if you don't mind, if you can do this, the synchronization in terms of preparing Camden Park to receive equipment to be used at Argyle.
Yeah.
That's very, I'm sure you'd say, very important.
No, and that's important because it could not have been done in Kingstown.
Right.
Because I'm going to skip one of my points just to keep the discussion going.
Don't skip, but you can.
No, I'm going to just rearrange that because Kingstown, right, in 2008, we got a report which recommended that containerized operation be ceased in Kingstown.
Mm-hmm.
That report was repeated in 2009. I think one of the gentlemen there, he was a Cuban by the name of Paniagua. I remember it because his name means bread and water, which reinforced what was said. So the facility was constructed in 1964, and in 2008, you're being told that the facility and Port Kingstown was designed with a life of about 30 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
1964
And it's now
plus 30.
last year was 60 years.
Would take it to the 90s.
It went far beyond what was.
It's going far beyond.
Yeah.
But I state that too, in that there's also the discussion about maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
When we got to 2001, Port Kingstown was already beyond its design life.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're doing maintenance to upkeep critical infrastructure, it has to be done within that period of its design life, not 8 years or 6 years after. You follow what I'm trying at that, right?
And I'm sure our listeners are following.
Yeah. So
because it meant at that point, a decision should have been made to construct a new facility.
It meant at that point, the infrastructure, if it was not properly upkept prior to 2001, it meant that there was challenges to be inherited, other than the space requirement and efficiency layout that I have already mentioned. Now, the port development currently being executed by the government is grounded in policy, in that the National Economic and Social Development Plan, which spans between 2013 and 2025, spoke with regards to improving physical infrastructure, right, and building climate resilience into physical infrastructure. And explicitly, an objective 4 of that policy speaks to the modernization and expansion of seaports, right? So we're still in 2008 area. And let me give you some numbers too, just to show why not expand Kingstown. Kingstown by itself was designed for 2,000 TEUs, 2,000 20-foot equivalent containers per year, right? Remember, it was not specifically designed for containerized operation.
And you're talking about 20 foot as opposed to 40 foot.
Yeah, the TEU means a 20-foot container. So
I just want your listeners to see what you're talking about.
Yeah, a 40-foot would be 2 containers.
Right. Yeah. I just want listeners to see what you're talking
Kingstown
about.
typically would handle, based on the space that it had, would handle just about 1,000 containers per year. Now,
1,000, what size?
1,000 40-foot.
40 foot. Okay.
Right, but just, I think what the public need to know is that a TEU, because I'm going to repeat it a few times, a TEU means a 20-foot container.
Okay.
Or a 20-foot equivalent, because there are also 45 feet and out of gauge type containers that you have to do the conversion. In 2001, right, the country handled 9,201 20-foot equivalent containers, right? In 2024, the country handled 24,416 20-foot equivalent containers. Camden Park was designed for between 12 to 16,000 TEUs, depending on how high you stack them. Kingston was designed after you retrofitted for about 2,000. So in combined, you have two ports with a capacity of, let's give it 18,000 TEUs, right? The report was saying maintain the two ports, probably spend a small amount. But this very report also recommended to the policymakers in the recommendation section that you have to transfer operations. If you're already using Kingston and you're using Camden Park, where else will you now transfer operations to?
Yeah.
And both ports, adding up to, let's call it 18,000 TEUs, and at nowhere close to what we're currently handling now in 2020. Last year, 2024, 24,000 TEUs. 24,416 20-foot equivalent containers came to St. Vincent last year. And we are projected, because the projections that we're working with for the port project and that we have been tracking since 2017, we're projecting to, with all going equal, and also with the government's initiative with regards to for the economic development, we're projected to achieve approximately 54,000 TEUs. We've already started seeing increase in TEU numbers because you have additional hotels, and so on. So why not Kingston? Kingston in and of itself outlived its usefulness prior to 2001. And even last night I came across a good colleague of mine sent me a clip from a newspaper. I'm not sure if I could call the name. But it's a Searchlight newspaper where the then area representative and Minister Scott was lamenting why Camden Park then was a critical infrastructure as a substitute to Kingston. Kingston at that time would have been congested, and this is in 1996, 1997, he said this. Kingston would have been congested and you had all the problems. But the difficulty in Camden Park is that the model apparently was a competitive one where you wanted to split the shipping. Some would go to Camden Park and some would go to Kingston. But the businesses decided that they're not using Camden Park per se if Kingston still remains for operational reasons. And
we got to ask Joel why, because he was part of the complex. ECG.
Actually, that's what I mean. It's because I was actually at ECGC when the Camden Park port was constructed.
Right.
I was all part of the whole discussions and so on regarding Camden Park at the time. But I have a question though. When you spoke about the
9,201
in 2000, are you speaking about TEUs in terms of 20-foot containers physically? The physical?
No, that's the
or you talk about
metric.
All right,
Yeah.
so that covers all cargo, because I'm raising the issue whether if you had break bulk cargo involved in that, because at that time,
not just container.
well, that's the point I'm trying to make, because I'm just saying at that time, because my first job, by the way, as a 16-year-old grammar school boy, I worked as a stevedore at the Kingston port, along with some other colleagues from Montrose and people like Noel Jackson and so on, we recall.
Right.
So I worked on the port, and basically we worked in break bulk vessels.
Yeah.
And person break bulk vessel would basically is it's really where they're not in containers, but the boxes and so would be down in the hole of the hatches, and they both had to use slings to lift them out of the hatch and put them on the dock and transport them away and so on. But it's possible that they would have had boats like Saguenay and Ned and so on that would have been bringing break bulk cargo in addition to the container cargo. So I just wanted to say
I choose to use the container metric because it proves the point of congestion. We've already congested just based on the container volume. You imagine the additional challenge of the break bulk. And I just
Lensky, I'm having a challenge here. A number of people are asking that you stay as close as possible to the microphone because they're not hearing well, and which is what I've been. Yes, okay.
Yeah. So
but you need to put it.
The container metric.
That's much better.
Right.
Yes.
The container metric proves the point to be made with regards to inefficiency and lack of capacity. And when you have that combination, you're going to be challenged to deliver and attract the kind of investments
I
that
have a
are required for
question.
the economic growth.
Okay.
Question. When you establish the life of the facility, 30 years, 50 years, do you at the same time make plans for post-life?
It would be prudent to do. The question becomes, will those plans be followed? Yeah,
I want to follow up that
Yes.
question that because I had written something down. What implication would that have for insurance consideration?
Right. So
If you come to the end of the the designed lifespan
yeah,
of
well,
the facility,
the insurance companies are naturally risk averse. When you have a facility which is already beyond what it was designed to do, and it's failing, you would be, if depending on the coverage you need, your premium would be much higher on that piece of infrastructure. But the practical situation is this: it's a piece of infrastructure that can collapse at any time. And we had the real life experience of Hurricane Beryl, which showed that destruction. And then the Port Authority currently is pretty much limping along, but they're doing so pretty good in terms of supplementing the activities in Kingston by boating vessels at the cruise terminal, and at the same time the use of Camden Park. You know, so I think if I could just summarize now,
Yes.
because the case for why a new port and why the approach being done now is still being, we have to repeat it, and it's important. You have limited capacity, over capacity. Ports for 18,000 TU handling 24,000 TUs. That's going to lead to maintenance challenges. That's going to lead to congestion, inefficiencies. The two facilities, both facilities were not designed specifically for the conditions that they currently have to operate under within a regulatory framework, and even just normal, modern day port operations.
What would it be the capacity of the new port?
The new port is designed to handle up to 54,000 TEUs.
Okay.
Because we went on a 50-year horizon, because we don't want a situation where you have a port that was built in 1993, right? Getting to its capacity by 2007. And that's what has happened to Camden Park.
Sorry, I mean, just actually 54,000 TUs. And this is a port operating 24/7,
Yeah.
2 shifts, 1 shift. What's the basis in terms
Right.
of determining that capacity?
The operational decisions will be made depending on the cargo throughput, right? So whether it's currently the port operates 24/7, so you could boat along the quayside 24/7. You can come anytime on board, and there will be a team there for you to, offload your vessel, offload your cars, offload your break bulk, offload your containers and break bulk. The yard space, right, does not directly link to the operating parameters of the port. It links to your future capacity and what you project would occur in the economy. And that's why I use the numbers that I've done so far this morning to show that from 2001, you had growth from 9,000 TEUs up to last year, 24,000 TEUs. And when you track that growth, right, it is keeping in line with projection, because what stimulates growth? Opportunities coming through the new airport, improvements in tourism.
So it's almost sandals.
Yeah. Because
Holiday Inn Express and those kind of things.
Both the airport and the port are critical pieces of infrastructure, right? It cannot be, and I still have to get to making my full case as to why a new port. It cannot simply be an issue of, let's say, financial feasibility, right? It is not that what we're doing is not financially feasible, because the feasibility reports bore that out, and it gives you the sensitivity range within which the project remains feasible. But they become critical infrastructure, and these are pieces of infrastructure which you would say, you may know the cost of it, right? And you may worry about the cost, but you overlook the value. Having a modern port in this time positions St. Vincent and the Grenadines by having climate resilient infrastructure, energy smart and efficient infrastructure, having additional capacity, so it reduces the redundancy. Currently, the port operates in Kingston and Camden Park. You have to have redundant staff, multiple equipment. You get to reduce all of those costs. And the more efficient your port services, it's the more likely you're going to be attracting persons who want to do more business. There's going to be the potential for the transshipment because you have an attractive facility with space that can accommodate 2 vessels at the same time, as opposed to Camden Park, which is 1, and Kingston right now, which is 0 in terms of containerized vessel. So just because I've said a lot.
It's all right. Just go on and
With regards to
conclude
the
on
case-
it
the case
whenever you
with
feel like.
port, over the years, we've seen a change in use of facilities. We've discussed in the conversation. Over the years, we've seen the container and goods forecast. We've seen how that has increased based on the numbers. We currently have Kingston aged, condemned pretty much by report since 2008, and ineffective infrastructure in Camden Park. You know what I mean? There are the challenges there that we would not want to go into. You also have the issue of the efficiency of the layout. Inefficiency restricts economic growth. You have also the gestation period that it took to get this port project constructed from 2008 to 2022 May. You also have the issue of, we talk about the structural assessment reports and the modern requirements now for social things to be done in a socially inclusive way, climate resilient way. You have to comply with many standards. ISPS is just one, but there's also port environmental standards that has to be complied to. And on consolidated operation, etc.
Case made. For as far as I'm concerned. I want us now, Linsky, to look at the most challenging part of the construction of the port right now. The whole question of what is considered to be the clutching of the
And I want to start this phase by saying when I got your invitation to the meeting, you realize how quickly I responded.
You mean to the meeting? You mean to the program today?
Yes.
Okay.
We have a meeting about port development.
We have.
And you responded also?
Almost immediately. And at that time, I reflected on the wisdom of Nelson Mandela in terms of the timing to get involved in the discussion. I think that it's the opportune time. Not just because of the public issue, but because of the fact that we're still confidently going towards.
Well, in all credit to the program, I was just reading the Times.
So, and then the other thing to not to downplay, but construction is always a challenge. Prior to 2025, the port project was moving along with challenges, but also smoothly. The larger of the challenges that we had then, that was publicly discussed, would have been the issue of the dredging and reclamation. But when you're dealing with these aspects, when you get over the initial shock, you have to address these things very patiently and calmly. Level heads have to prevail. You assess what the situation is, which we've done. You communicate to your stakeholders, which we've done. And you proceed to try and rectify what has happened, as opposed to being paralyzed that something has happened and you go off on a tangent. So the construction of the port was done in such a way where the contractor placed reclamation material in the harbor of Kingston prior to the construction of the quay-wall, right? The quay-wall for the port is being done using a combined.
Yes. I need you to say a bit more about what is exactly the quay-wall.
Okay.
Because people need to.
So the wall that reclaims, that retains, the reclamation material, and along which the vessels eventually boat, that had to be constructed after the placement of the reclamation material, right? The wall was being constructed of king piles, which are circular, and sheet piles, which has a Z profile, but they're more, those serve primarily as infill pieces. That process went through in 2024, right? Because of the placement of the material prior to the construction of the quay-wall, it means then you had excess material on the outside where the vessels have to boat.
I have some photos here. I want to try and put them up. You
Yeah,
tell
you
me.
can put up one of these side photo, but I wouldn't be able to see it.
It's all right.
Yeah.
You don't have to see. You
But
know what it is.
it's known where the kill wall is by now. It's where you have that loss of material being observed. So the contractor then naturally had to remove the excess material on the outside in order to create enough depth so that the vessels can come alongside. And he had to remove material down to 12 meters below water level, right? Using the technical terms in terms of chart datum and so on, we may lose people. So below the water, you had to have at least a clearance of 12.5 meters. That is to ensure that you can accommodate the larger type vessels that are expected to visit St. Vincent without having any challenge in terms of them, let's say, running aground and so on.
So yeah, so what they call it, the draft.
The draft, right? So during that exercise, we realized that material was being lost from on the inside, from on the land side. Obviously, something went wrong. You had to investigate. When we investigated, we realized that what occurred is that between every king pile and sheet pile, between each king pile, there's a sheet pile, right? And they typically would what you call clutch together, right? And what has happened is that those clutches, for one reason or the other, would have separated to the extent that it was counted 30% of the clutches would have separated. The material, therefore, is being lost through those separations, right? And not under any of the
So it's vertical as opposed to at the floor.
Yes, vertical.
Vertical.
Right? The contractor obviously would have had to investigate, and their consultants, design consultants, analyze the situation. It was determined that the only compromise on the quay wall is its retention ability. That's why you see the material being lost, not its structural stability or otherwise. Hence, with that being said, it means now you have to rectify the situation because the contractor is bound by his contract to deliver to the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines modern port facility, which meets the specification requirements, etc., etc. And the work has to go on. You don't stop. You know, the work has to go on. The fix that will be applied has three components, and it's a standard fix. Prior to our being on air, we would have been discussing, what the manuals say with regards to this fix. As a matter of fact, it said it's an easy fix in terms of what has to be done. Doing it can be time consuming and also challenging because you're speaking of one, you have to first now close those gaps that the material is escaping from. How do you do that? You're going to be doing by welding steel plates onto each king pile now. So spanning across where the sheet pile isn't filled, you weld the plates from one king pile to the other. That then creates a cavity between the sheet pile and your welded plate, which you would then fill, which is the second step, fill with concrete, right? That then seals and prevents further loss of reclamation material in the future. Once that seaside work is done, the third step would then proceed, which is you have to...
Before you get on to the third step, how, practically speaking, how is that done? You have divers
Right.
and so on.
The welding is being done by certified divers, and discussing with these guys, they've vast experience, pretty much dealing with the same issue, and in much more rougher environment.
These divers are from where?
From the UK. It's a company from the UK with vast experience. They are executing underwater works just as if you're on land with these specialized tools. So in order to weld, you have to clean the surfaces. They have their underwater grinders, they clean the surfaces. Then they put the steel plates in position, and then they would weld underwater. They would go and do their inspection, measurement, testing. Everything is being done underwater. But it's going to take time, right? It's going to take time because they are operating in depths approaching, let's call it 20 meters. That's 60 feet. How long can you stay? How long can a diver be permitted to stay underwater working, right? At 20 meters. they typically have just over an hour. You know what I mean? So there's
So
a
it's time
constant
consuming.
cycle. There's a constant cycle
And
team
rotation.
in the interest of the safety of the divers, because it has to be done safely also, right? So the as much as the fix is a standard, or as mentioned in the manuals, an easy fix, it's standard. Getting it done involves actual humans who have to be working within their own safety parameters. Everything that is done on site is being recorded in the interest of safety, so it can be monitored above surface, and that is ongoing. That execution of welding at last count was about 16% complete. In that section where you have the large depression that would have been developed. Once the welding is done of those plates, then you have to apply underwater concrete underwater. The process for that is that you will use a Tremy tube, right? Which is, for simplicity, a tube that would go into that void created by welding the panel onto the sheet piles. And you have to pour that concrete so that the tube remains inserted in the concrete itself. So as the concrete flows out of the tube, it displaces all of the water above. You're going to say, but Lenski, you're going to put concrete underwater, you're going to wash out the cement. How do you do that? It means that the design, the mixed design of the concrete to achieve the strengths that are required, you're going to be using a lot of what is called plasticizers. So it's not your normal 3-to-1 mix that you guys would use a shovel and so on. You're going to be using a lot of plasticizers because you have to reduce the water content of that cement, because you're going to be placing it in water. You're going to use a lot of additives to ensure that the drying time is reduced and that the strengths can be achieved after you do your 28-day test, 7-day, 14-day, 28-day test. And all of these things would be quality control. And it also has to be applied using the divers, because someone has to be guiding that through to ensure that when it is being disposed into that cavity, the concrete would flow up, displacing everything that is inside of it. And then you have to allow for it to overflow also, so that the impurity part is out. And then that has to be done. So you'll be doing that along that entire front wall in the area where there is observed the clutch, right? Now, in terms of what the public will see, right? The Prime Minister in his press conference said that you would not see an above surface manifestation of the repairs until around June thereabout, right? That is because you have to complete the welding, you have to complete the application of the concrete to fill that cavity, therefore restoring the retention capability of the K-wall, right? But while doing so, the contractor continues to excavate both on land and in the water. When I was passing down to come to this program, the excavators, they're removing material from on the outside of the K-wall, which is on the water end. And then the contractor also will be trimming the material on the inside. And that is done because while you cannot control the initial loss of material through the clutch, right? As you do the repairs and you excavate, you would expect additional loss. And then that now has to be controlled, done in a controlled manner. Because you're also using divers, it's a secondary consideration. Because you're also using divers, you have to be conscious that there's a hazard, which is known as a delta P, or a differential pressure hazard, that divers can face. And if you have water on the inside where there's that loss of material at a different elevation than on the outside, then it creates a differential pressure, which is a very dangerous diving hazard, which also has to be factored in. So the public will see photos appearing to be worse. But as was said in the weekend paper, what you see as looking at being worse, for us, it's actually the fix being applied, right? And there's also another reason why the contractor has to excavate on the inside and make those holes bigger. The loss of material was through the compacted fill, right? And it is possible that once that material is being lost, you can have cavities developing, right? So the surface can look good, but the cavities can develop. So it is prudent that you collapse along that entire K wall to be certain that you have no cavities along that apron section, which is where the cranes and the containers would eventually land.
You're doing 100% along
yes, they have to collapse the entire section. So what you would see once
So you would see more water along that.
Well, you would see they're not looking for the water; they're looking for the holes.
Well, well, they won't be able to see the hole, they'll see the water.
Right. So you on the land side of the
You'd
boat,
see more
you
water.
will see more water as
Right.
the rectification goes
Goes
along.
on. Okay.
And you know, a picture is worth 1,000 words.
Mhm.
These pictures show so much more details than just a hole.
Mhm.
It shows the fact that the area remains stable because you have the equipment, the container workspace. You see platforms. You see activity being done. You see vehicles driving along, and that would not be done if it's an unsafe, uncontrolled, erratic type of operation. So yes, you will see the excavation along the quay wall
The quay wall,
extend
the whole-
right along.
the length of
But
it.
by the time you get to June thereabout, and hopefully before, you will also see the recompaction occurring from the site to the fish market, and progressing down. And once that recompaction is done, then you get back to your normal scheme of things of putting down the sub-base material, the cement-treated base material, and then you finish your pavement layer. Once your pavement layer is then finished, you install your bollards, you install the fenders, you install the ladders, and you get ready for a boat. You know,
All
so in for all intents and purposes, yes, there is an issue. The issue has a standard engineering fix. It is standard. It's not novel. The issue that occur is also not a novel situation that occur when sheet piles are being driven, embedded on both sides with materials, right? I think what knocked a lot of wind out of the argument is when persons learned, even though the Prime Minister would have said it in his initial briefing, when persons learned that the cost for this rectification work is
Well,
not gonna add.
I want to come to the cause, but before we do that, and I'll allow you to come to the cause, I want to ask about the time frame.
Mhm.
What time frame are you looking at?
Right. So currently the rectification is progressing. It's picking up its momentum. I mentioned it's about 15-16% complete thus far. There is still adjustments being made with regards to the teams, the dive teams. There's still adjustment being made in terms of you having to mobilize the specialized equipment and so on. So we are taking it step by step. We want to be prudent to assess the completion of a phase, and then you'll be able to project it properly, and so on. As it stands, our contractual end date is August 31st, 2025, but it is very likely that we will be going over the August 2025. That has to be dealt with, obviously, within all of the contractual processes that applies to extension of time, right?
Jolly, yeah, I think Jolly wanted you to come in.
Right? And on the issue of cost now.
No, we're not there
You're
yet.
not there yet.
No, that's Jolly.
Okay.
You said earlier that there's actually video monitoring of the work of the divers.
Real-time video monitoring.
Real-time video monitoring.
So you can go back and you can know who welded which seam, when, what challenge, what difficulty, what quality. Real-time.
But is it out of place to say that you can share images with the public in terms of the
No,
work?
but we intend to. We will be working along with the Agency for Public Information to make this it's an interesting endeavor, the rectification also, to make
And
it
for
known.
transparency as well.
Transparency. So
Yeah.
as soon as you possibly can do it, I
Yeah.
would recommend
Yeah,
that you do it soon.
and also in the interest of safety too,
Mm.
because while we're doing the rectification work on the quay wall, we're also installing scour protection. Right?
Say a
There's
bit more about that. What
There's
is-
a 25-meter area on the seabed at minus 12 meters below water, where
Explain that properly. Not
okay.
the average person cannot
Yeah,
visualize
but
what you
at
say.
least
Minus
those folks
12.
do it, right? So below the water
they're not
surface,
seeing it here.
right? Below the water surface, right? When you go down after at the finished level is 12 meters down,
Right.
right? Which is let's call
60.
it 40 feet.
40 feet, okay.
And that number would tell you why the piers are 40 feet too short.
No, let's forget about that.
Right?
But,
But no, right. So at that level,
Mm.
you have to install what is called scour protection, extending 25 meters away from the front of the quay wall.
okay.
So while the divers are there doing the rectification, within a safe offset, the scour protection work continues because works have to be installed. Works have to be done in parallel. You just put your hands up and say that.
Yeah.
So the scour protection is basically the placement of rocks on the seabed. And there are two types. The first layer will be a filter rock, which is much smaller, and then on the top you would have an armor rock, which is a bit bigger. The reason for the scour protection, when you have a vessel with its props approaching 12 meters below water, when that starts up,
You're talking about the engine,
the engine,
propeller.
yeah.
Propellers,
When the
Propeller.
engine starts and the propeller starts spinning, that the speed at which that water is pushed out can scour or wash away loose material.
Okay, yeah.
So you install the scour protection to ensure that is mitigated.
Okay.
Yeah. And work on site is 24
That's going
hour
on, and that's
in
going
that
on.
regard.
Yeah, okay.
So we will share the experience
It's useful. It will be
to
useful.
the public to show what is being done
Yes.
pretty soon.
Yeah, okay.
The port, the construction of the port, is it based on vessels that exist today
No.
or vessels that are likely to exist in 20 or 30 years from now?
The design depth will accommodate the vessels that has the highest potential to visit St. Vincent.
Yes.
Yes.
And the reason why I asked that too, because more and more, most vessels traditionally they have the propeller to the back, right? But more and more, we're starting like with the cruise ships and so with cargo vessels, they have the side thrusters, right? So they can come in and they can go in like a crab.
They can be
right?
agile, yeah.
Yes, and go sideways. And similarly, they can move out in the same way. So I just wonder whether or not there are implications for now. These side propellers, these side thrusters, can have any implications for anything that you're doing currently,
No.
assuming that this is what will take place in the near future.
The impact of the bow thrusters and the propeller, it's the same. It projects water with a particular velocity in a particular direction, which can lead to scour. And we're installing
Yes.
scour protection.
All right.
Yes.
Come to cost. This is extra cost. Who's bearing this cost?
It is extra cost to the contractor.
Okay. So the
And-
people
and
of
we-
St.
and-
Vincent,
and-
the country is
well,
not bearing that cost.
The country is not going to be bearing the cost of the rectification work.
Right. That's what I mean.
The next follow-up question is, how could they say that so confidently?
In the contract,
Cost and time, and Joel would be an expert on this. Cost and time have specific rules under the contracts,
right.
and they're also what are called insurable events. The public was
So the simple
notified.
question is, those things are built into the contract.
Those are like your rules of engagement. at
Yeah,
the
so they're
start.
built into the contract.
How will I what occurrences, right, would lead to a cost obligation on the contractor's part?
Yes, but
what
I just wanted to
occurrences
say
may lead to-
simply,
Yes,
are they built into the contract?
based on the rules of the contract, the cost is being borne by the contractor.
I have no doubt about that. I
who
just
is-
want
who is pursuing cost recovery
from the
is
insurance.
Insurance,
Right.
yeah.
So it's in the contract. Basically, that's what you're saying.
More or less.
All right.
In
Okay.
simple terms.
Yeah, that's I just want I deal with simplicity, so I just want us to be simple.
Great.
My question, another question to you. Where in the Caribbean or elsewhere in the world, but I say the Caribbean because it's closer to us, you'd find that kind of design of the port.
Where
In the Caribbean.
where the vessels
Come
come
alongside,
alongside
yeah.
a solid kit,
Right. Where in the Caribbean is there?
Grenada,
Grenada.
Antigua,
Antigua.
Mhm.
Jamaica,
Okay.
and I would say a bit more on that,
Yeah.
right?
Well, do that.
Because when you're doing a reclamation, what you use to hold back or to retain the reclamation material will naturally vary based on the site parameters. Pigeon and I spoke about the reclamation in the 60s, 70s, when the foreshore of Kingston was reclaimed. That was essentially done in about 5 to 6 meters of water. So 15 feet of water, right? It would have been feasible for you to use the approach that you currently have, where you have rocks being packed to hold back your sand and whatever else is done. Now, we're operating in approximately 20, let's just average it out, 20 feet of water. Now, the structure to hold back the reclamation has to then now change, because you can't have loose rock holding back, holding back
20 feet
of
of material, of
and still
modern.
be subject to the action of the waves and so on. It's going to be unstable. It's going to be unstable. Hence, the options that we had on our project for a K wall was a combination wall, as it is, which is a sheet piles and king piles alternating, one king, one sheet, one king, one sheet. There was also the option for caissons. Caissons are essentially hollow rectangular blocks that you can sink and then fill to keep them in position, and you create that vertical retaining structure. And then there was a third option where you could have actually used solid blocks and stack them almost like a step to achieve that retaining structure. So yes, there's a belief, Port Kingston looks one way, Port Camden Park looks the other way. But it is like that because the reclamation done in those areas were in very shallow waters.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you even if you presume it is feasible for you to do the rocks, it means then you're pushing your jetty. Because once you have that rock into that rock situation, you're gonna be doing a jetty in even more deeper water. And one of the technical challenges that we have at the cruise terminal, why we cannot add another dolphin, and the dolphin being that when you look at the cruise terminal, you see the concrete deck, then you see a lot of a
steel kind of
a metal
extension.
platform going over to I think it's an octagon structure,
Yes.
and then another one. The reason why we can't add a third is because that third would fall in depths which are no longer feasible for simple piles and being capped.
Kingston is deep. Kingston Harbour is deep.
So the design that you choose, right, has a lot to do with the nature of the site. And it also has to do with operational efficiencies. Now, Camden Park, as an example, has a pile deck. It has a crane on top of that pile deck. But what happens in Camden Park from an operational perspective? The crane has to take the container and place it onto a truck. That's a third element in your operations, right? In Camden Park, when it was retrofitted for the crane, when it was assessed and found suitable for the crane, one of the advices that you're still gonna need a truck. You can't do what is called, I think it's dumping. That's the
When you say a truck, you mean
a trailer.
something on which the crane itself moves.
No, the crane removes the container from the vessel and then places it onto a trailer.
Oh, that's what you're talking
Which
about.
then has to be
Yeah.
taken to the yard
Yeah.
to be removed by a container handling unit.
Right.
If you have a pile deck, that's pretty much what you go for. With the solid key that we currently have, you can simply take the container from the ship and
put
place it on the apron.
apron.
And then the container handling unit takes it and carry it in the yard, stack, and persons record it.
More efficient.
It's
And
more
less
efficient
costly.
because it cuts out one aspect of the operation.
And it's less
equipment
costly as
is
well.
required. It will be.
Yeah.
It will be.
All right.
So yeah.
While all of this work is happening, what's happening to those structures that were built to operators, offices and so on? What's happening in them?
A lot.
Well, tell us some.
The structures, and just allow me, because
Yes,
it's good
that's
to
why I
educate
ask
the
you.
public. The structures are rumored to be shaken, right? That's not true,
Clarify.
right? If there is any instance of shaken, there are explanations, right? One, it's because you have compacting equipment operating, and during the soil compaction, while let's say the admin building and CFS was going up, you're actually compacting all the way down to, let's say, 30 meters below water, or below the 15 meters below the original seabed, which would put it about 35 meters below the water level. And you're gonna have those vibrations, right? So any vibrations is not a serviceability issue, right? In addition, these buildings are being monitored for settlements. The buildings have to stand up within certain tolerances, right? With regards to both settlement and also differential settlement.
So you're talking about vertical and lateral movement.
Yeah. And all of these issues are being monitored and falls within the parameters that they should. And from a first principle perspective, if there was a challenge to the admin building and the CFS building, you think we're going to still put up the garage and the brick wall?
Well, it's not happening. So let's not even go there.
Yeah, but
So-
in terms of what is happening on
Yes.
those buildings, the administrative building is pretty advanced. On the third level, I'm not sure if you're displaying the photos.
No,
but
well, I can start.
we
with that
we
now.
have installed the solar panels, which are
okay.
for energy generation. We have on the third level, we're actually now closing out offices in terms of finished. So tiling, painting, all of that done, furniture in place.
So before you go on to that, the solar
Yes.
panels are where on the top?
On the top of the admin
Okay,
building.
so that photo has been displayed.
Yeah,
now.
and the admin building, for those listening, that's the largest of the 4 buildings on site. One with the color facade, right? The second level, it's also moving along in terms of snagging out of the offices and so on. Things like your access control system, smart lighting system, those things are all in and tested. We have recently done the inspection with the electrical inspectorate for the substation, and we will be now working towards trying to get power from Vinlec so that we can test things like the elevator and other system that requires permanent power and not power coming from a generator. Because from an environmental perspective too, this project has a very low environmental footprint in that the contractor was able to do a lot of his construction using power from Vinlec as opposed to power from a generator, which would burn diesel and contribute to pollution, etc., etc. On the CFS building, which is the container freight station warehouse, which is in line with the admin building, the warehouse section for that is pretty much complete with the fire installation. The shutter doors are already in place. The office sections are advanced. There's still tiling work ongoing, mechanical, electrical, plumbing. All of those things are pretty advanced indoors. We can see the garage, which is the building that still has the blue vapor barrier installed. The exterior cladding for that is ongoing. The garage section is pretty much done, where you have your open air workshop sections and so on. The offices with the mechanical, electrical, plumbing moving along also. The substation, as I said, is done. The electrical substation. The port currently, it comes with its own generating capacity, and also its dedicated switch rooms, etc., to deal with all of those electrical manner. And then the very last building, which is going up, is your break bulk warehouse, which is the one closest to the material loss. And that the first cladding level is the first cladding layer, has been installed. I think the roof is pretty much done, 90, maybe 100% done by now. And we continue doing that along with the internal areas for the segregation of, let's say, dangerous goods, damaged goods, and so on.
Joel, you wanted to comment?
Yeah, 2 questions. In terms of, well, we have the minister responsible for the ports, and we also have the minister responsible for energy and
Yes.
Vinlec and so on. So she can wear 2 hats or no hats. But I'm just speaking in terms of the solar paneling and so forth and the energy. Are you adopting the Vinlec, the buy all, sell all, or maybe either you're the minister would be able to respond. Are you selling the energy, all of it, to Vinlec, and then the port will then buy from Vinlec, or would there be some different arrangement to what obtains?
Minister will touch on the policy, but in terms of how it would function, the energy would be generated from our administrative building, and then it would be fed into the grid,
right?
And then we consume, and then there would be that credit. So
so you will pay whatever the market price is for energy from Vinlec, minus what you contribute.
Yeah, we'll go based on what the current energy policy states.
Okay, I don't know if you want to add anything to that in terms of the energy policy.
I would just like to stress that we should be reviewing the energy policy currently, and we're now looking at making the whole tariffing system better and making the whole private supply of electricity better. But I would also like to stress that the government has this initiative where we're using renewable sources of electricity in many of the major projects, and we're even trying to retrofit existing buildings. So the Port Authority building, which is up next to Graves, opposite the customs, they would have added solar panels to reduce their use of electricity, or basically not reduce their use, but just add to renewable sources. And we're doing that on all the major projects, including we did that for the AIA airport. We're going to be doing that with the modern hospital in Annisville, and likewise with the solar panels on the port.
Do you know how much of the energy consumed would essentially come from the use of solar?
That
solar
number
sources?
always keeps slipping, Milinsky. What's exactly that number?
We'll be
again?
generating 112 kilowatts of solar energy.
Yes.
from our plant.
Mhm.
It will be a contribution to what
To Vinlife?
is required.
It's,
to
yeah, it's
operate.
not going to be completely
Oh,
off.
oh, oh, it
It's
won't
not
be.
Yeah,
going
yes,
to be. They're
yes.
not going to be. But you
Understood.
should at least be able to cover the use of the office buildings. They should basically be almost net
Well,
zero
this
based
this
on what is
information
being-
is basically for people who are listening who think it's going to be so expensive. In fact, I heard one parliamentarian already saying, if you could imagine how expensive it's going to be to operate it, to the point where I heard him saying that you have to share with private sector, basically privatize
and there's
the
always
thing.
area for expansion as we become operational. We could always look at expanding it through different projects to expand the amount of renewable energy we are able to harness.
And back still with you, Madam Minister, the question of the preparation administratively for operationalizing the facility, staffing, and so are
Yes,
you
the
working
process.
right now?
Yes, the process is definitely ongoing. It has been going on for a while. The Civil Standard Grenadines Port Authority, they have been implementing and going through some strategic plans. And those strategic investigation and now plans, they're helping them to transition smoothly. Another thing that the Port Authority has been doing, they've been stepping up their budget annually for training. So the training of staff prepares them for what their new roles are going to be. But definitely, and then in going forward, the Prime Minister has been talking about the way that he would like to see it. I know some of the legislative work has already been done. We've had meetings with the AG and we've started the whole process of what is going to be the new structure regarding the port.
Okay, so there may be a distinction between an authority and the operating
Yes.
institution.
Yes.
Minister, just for I kind of leave Lindsay for a while because, and this is up your training area. What can we expect as the social impact of that particular project,
Of the port?
the port project?
Well, definitely, we're looking at improved working conditions for the staff, the current staff at the port. And then you're talking about the other social impacts. We cannot forget the relocation of the 149 households who are now placed in better environments and what's going to be the impact of that.
Are you talking
So,
about the same Lomas Hill
yes,
residents?
because you
Yeah,
see the thing
yeah,
about
I
it, when
actually
we
want to
talk about it, when we sit down and we talk about it, we talk about the impacts of Hurricane Beryl on the coastline. We sometimes forget that these people would have been in the direct line of impact of Hurricane Beryl, and the shelters that they might have had may not have been as sound as the ones that they have been moved to. Some of the social impacts we could go on. We can talk about the improvement to the whole ecosystem regarding the improvement to the soil line now. That has social implications. We can also talk about the staff that have been employed on the port project, people who would have gained training on the port project. I would have met youngsters who would have left secondary school and are now learning how to test cement in a construction lab. This is something that
No, they can go
cannot-
to Braxa, and you don't need to go in. Just go to Braxa.
but Braxa cannot accommodate everybody, but you've seen a widening. I can speak, for example, I know for Women's Day, we had a young lady featured. She works with the project implementation unit. She's one of your interns, Linsky. And
Yeah.
she's fresh out of community college. She's about to go off and study. But the way that she's speaking and the terms that she's using, I am seasoned in the area, in the technical areas, and I was so pleased that this is going to be the knowledge or her base knowledge going off into university. And she's working on these huge projects. You're talking about there's going to be jobs. You have had 6 interns that have gained full-time employment. There's been training. ACON, which is the contracting team on the site, they have been part of the on-site program, which give young people the opportunity to learn on site as well. So there's quite a bit of social impacts for everyone.
But under the same rubric and jobs. Lenski spoke earlier on about Camden Park, and we didn't go into much in terms of what is going to happen with the Camden Park port. But what happened to the port workers at Camden Park? Is there going to be a redundancy, and therefore what happens as we move all the operations into one in Kingstown?
Well, although we have not sorted out all of the operational arrangements, I'm telling you that it's going to be one of the priorities of this government would be to reduce that whole impact of job loss, if there is going to be one.
Well, I trust that, I hope that we can be as, while productivity is critical and so forth, labor productivity inclusive, that we would find a way that we would retain as many of the staff as possible productively.
Yes, and currently on the port modernization project, if we're to talk about what is the current staff makeup, there are 159 locals that are currently employed by the contractor. 18 of those are females, and you're seeing females who are getting further and direct training in the construction industry, and that is something that we can't help but applaud.
Is there a possibility, perhaps Zelensky, you might, or maybe both of you, is there a possibility that some of these skilled, these workers who have acquired additional skills might be leaving to go with the contractors?
Yeah. We have an example. I think she actually left just around Easter. This is a young lady who started as an environmental intern, went away, did her master's, came back and took up the position of health and safety manager. And now she left to go to another Caribbean island on the next project that Aecon is constructing.
Oh.
Yeah, I couldn't mention the name off air, but we've seen that. And I think too, there's a whole list of individuals and skills that we've been tracking in terms of where persons have been receiving training, and skills that will be needed, and some which are unique because of the port construction, which may be needed during the operations also. So we're keeping track of those names and persons.
So, for example, are there local divers who are working with the imported ones?
In this case, no.
No.
And because of the very specialized nature of the work that they're doing. Yes.
Okay, and of course the equipment and all that.
The equipment and the training and certification requirement.
Oh,
I think,
you have to be certified.
It is something that I would have mentioned, I think, in my very first program here with Minister Francis with regards to training. One of the things we've observed is that not just for the individuals, but also for the companies and so on, they do not approach their work where you have a lot of documentation to prove your competency.
Okay.
So that is something that we recognize as a weakness. And
have you been doing it? Have you been correcting that on the project?
No, well, it means that sometimes individuals may not land the opportunity that they may need, but that they may apply for. But the contractor has been very accommodating in taking persons who has the aptitude, and a lot of training on-site training would have been done with the possibility of making your way up. And as Minister said, we have over 150 local persons on site. And that number is a relatively good mix. If you match it, the percentage local and the percentage CARICOM nationals working on site, it equates to 88%.
Okay. Minister of Urban Development, Minister, how is the port project likely to transform Kingstown? It's certainly that part of Kingstown. What are the possibilities, and what are the expectations?
Well, the port project is going to be one of the most transformational projects that we have ever seen in St. Vincent and Kingstown. Kingstown, by its very nature, it's a port city. It was developed as a port city, and it has operated as a port city. So that's just going to further intensify that use, but it's also going to give space for other uses that have not been in Kingstown, or has not been prevalent in Kingstown. Sorry, I'm getting a bit tongue-tied. But the Prime Minister has articulated a vision for the spaces that were once occupied, the land space that was once occupied by the previous port. And this vision include the expansion of the creative culture, the cultural sites, and even the service industries. We're talking about further expansion of the cruise facility to allow more cruise ships into Kingstown, as well as the introduction of cultural areas, shopping, hotel accommodation on the sites that were previously port operated areas. So we're going to see a transformation. It's going to be one of the greatest opportunities that we have seen probably in our lifetime and the Vincentian history, to put what is truly the Vincentian mark on us creating our landscape. Because Kingston was created at a time, colonial times, and it was created at a time when cars was not as many as there were.
Joel is the only person who used to drive car.
Well, I was going to say that there was none. There's donkey card.
Yes.
And you know how
donkey cart,
we used to get heckled when we go St. Lucia and Sal, say, Kingston only have 3 streets. Big street, back street, and middle street.
Yes. So
Talking about streets and only streets, what's your expectation in terms of the traffic
in
around
terms of
that
the
particular
traffic-
area? Transporting huge containers.
Well, I'm going to be very honest with you, right? As Minister of Port, I usually ask for the updates on the amount of cars that are coming into this country.
Yes.
And I'm telling you, there are a lot of cars coming in.
We what?
There are a lot of cars coming in. I think maybe in 1 or 2 months, we would have received 300 cars. And that just show you. So there's going to be cars and there will be an increase in traffic. But as part of this project, we're looking to and we're working along with key stakeholders, including the traffic department, the Ministry of Planning, Transport and Works, and we're trying to develop this best flow of traffic and to reduce the backup of traffic.
Cecil, I have a question.
Is road widening a part of that project?
Yes, the foreshore area.
No, I'm talking about the other development you just spoke about a while ago.
Well, there's a wider project to aim at developing the urban regeneration of Kingston. No, but we're talking about the port implementation, port modernization project. The foreshore road is a part of that project.
Are you talking about Bay Street? The little part of Bay Street?
No, if I could just maybe go through a few points with regards to traffic. As part of the port project, we did our own traffic impact assessment, right? And those recommendations, which would lead to structural, has been made the responsibility of the contractor. And then there are other operational issues that you have to deal with within the existing city. So for the project, the expansion of the reclamation site road or the foreshore road is a part of it. That will be integrated with the McCoy, Melville, and Higginson Street, right?
People cannot readily visualize McCoy or Higgins. You gotta give building.
Okay, the street that runs between Little Tokyo and Korea is the one that runs between
Melville.
Gibson and the Anglican school,
Okay.
and the one that runs down where Spirit used to be.
Right. See, people follow that. People follow that.
Right.
What is McCoy? Higginson is the one by Methodist Church, and Melville is the one by Korea's.
Yeah. So there's going to be that. Minister mentioned the Kingston Urban Revitalization project, which is a comprehensive review of the city with regards to how do the city best reorganize around the port, more or less. So that's a complementary assignment.
And not only around the port, it's how the city has grown and some of the other changes that we need to make, because we can all appreciate that Kingston is getting bigger. Urbanization is happening in St. Vincent and the Grenadines as it's happening in many parts of the world, and more people are gravitating towards Kingston or the south. We don't want to say just Kingston alone, but you can see the southern belt that can run from Calico all the way to, let's say, Camden Park, or even a bit further. You can carry it to probably
Diamond.
You would go to Diamond, exactly. So just that southern belt in St. Vincent, that
I know I asked you this last week and you answered, but for the benefit of our listeners, could you give us an update as to what is happening with the Grenadines Wharf?
So yes, I did. You did ask me that last week, and I have touched base. So the RFP, which was the request for proposal, should be out, and they should be getting responses from engineering firms to deal with the reconstruction of berth number 5 that was critically damaged during Hurricane Beryl.
All right, folks, we can go on and on, but we have a commitment to for listeners, followers to call and pose questions to Minister and to Linsky.
Do we have a
And
call on the
not
line?
yet, but soon there will be.
I
have two
think,
questions.
okay, I just wanted to talk about, you asked me about what was the social impact
Mhm.
of this study and some of the social impacts of this study. I think we need to talk about what has been the economic impact of this study so far,
Yeah.
right? So we would have stated what the budget is, and I am happy to report that approximately 129 million Eastern Caribbean dollars has been retained from this project in our local economy. You know, that has been through salaries, through jobs, through
Okay.
local spending at stores and such. And it's estimated that a further 8 or 9 million would be retained by the end of the project.
But that's money that you're paying out to get back in.
Yes,
So we're the source and we're the receiver.
but it still counts
It's
because
so-
sometimes when you hear such a large amount, people tend to say, oh, but that doesn't stay in our economy. That goes out, is a foreign contractor. But no, it's here. It's
No,
being,
yeah, well.
yeah, but
Yeah. So we need to wait. You have another question, Joel?
Yeah, I
Because
just have
well, in the meantime, let me just invite persons to call. But Minister, you have to respond. Last week while you were on, somebody called from Sandy
oh,
Bay.
yes, there
But-
was a gentleman, he called from Sandy Bay, Mr. Batiste. I will be grateful if you can call again today, Mr. Batiste, so I can just record your first name, what it is you want it to be on air or off air. I would allow
Well,
Cecil to give
he
the
can call
details.
on the other line at the
Yes.
end of the program, 457-9994. We will get that call outside at the end of the program. So
Yes.
Mr. Batiste, if you're listening, or if somebody who is close to Mr. Batiste is listening, give him that message, please. That minister would like to get his first name so she can do the complete follow-up. Joel.
Yeah, while the calls come in, I have two quick questions. One directed to Lensky and the other one to Minister Brown. One
Joel, we have a call.
Hurricane Lenny is my question.
Yes.
We'll come back. We'll come back. We'll find time to deal with that. Good afternoon. Welcome to the program.
Oh, hello. My name is Marilyn Valentine. Just a short word. First of all, a very good program. Thank you as usual. I thought perhaps if Mr. Douglas would say to people that it's not unusual, I think he may have said it, to have these complications in terms of the engineering. Now, only because I read voraciously that when Dubai had been developing those huge hotels, I thought, what a feat, and only to read the tremendous challenges that they face and the way the engineers, being so excellent, were able to face up to everything and overcome them. So that's about it. I'll get off the air now, and maybe Mr. Douglas can say a bit about that it's not unusual. He did say it's not novel, but it's difficult for the average person to understand. So immediately they see some little issue, they feel it's all doom. You get the point?
Yes.
Okay,
Well, thank you very
Have
much.
a good
Thank you very
evening.
much for that question.
You're most welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Yes, and the caller is correct. It's not an unusual occurrence given the nature of construction being executed. And the rectification is also a standard rectification method.
Okay. All right. So, Joel, there's no
Yes,
call.
my question was, well, Hurricane Lenny in 1999, and we saw what it did to Kingstown and our West Coast. What's the likely impact? I think it might have been a category 3 or 4 hurricane coming from the western side. If that happens again, the likelihood, what's the probability?
Yeah.
Is the resistance, the resilience better, the capacity better to resist?
Yeah, we have a better example than Hurricane Lenny. We have Hurricane Beryl. Hurricane Beryl directly impacted St. Vincent as a category 3/category 4, depending on what parameter you were tracking at the time. And at that time, in July of 2024, our port was unfinished and it was battered, and it survived. The current port is constructed to survive the impacts of a category 5 hurricane, Joel. And before Lenny, the hurricane that closest impacted us with that strength would have been Allen. right? But I have to say too, during the development of this project, during our modeling, etc., the consultants at the time would have changed the track of both Hurricane Irma and the two that affected up north were
Maria?
Irma and Maria. They would have modeled using those parameters and changed those tracks to pass them directly over St. Vincent. So you would have seen what the different impact waves and forces, etc., would have been, so that they can also factor those into the design conditions. So
Yeah. The only reason, sorry, I understand
It's
again
okay.
about burial,
Yes.
but the only reason I went to Lenny, because basically Lenny was relatively unique. And we saw what happened to Kingston. I think the cruise ship terminal was not yet completed,
Yeah,
more or less,
likewise,
almost
yeah.
there. And we saw the waters coming up to Bay Street by where the NIS building is, and we saw what's happening. We just wanted to ask that question.
Yeah.
We wanted satisfied
Yeah.
that
Well,
we would be good. And
the shortened version of, and I tend to be long sometimes, but the shortened version is that the port facility had a real life test in an incomplete state, and it survived. It was battered. You saw the
Yes.
photos. It survived. It is built to be climate resilient. The Category 5 hurricane strength was considered. The K wall is actually much higher than ordinary should be to reduce the level of inundation. It is not to say that in an extreme event that you would not have some level of inundation, but the structural integrity will remain.
okay.
Before you go to your question, Minister, just want to again repeat the number 457-9997 is the number to call us, and that would you can use your WhatsApp or straight call. Yes, Joel.
Yeah, my question to the minister relates to berthing for ferries and ferry services.
Yes.
I've been involved to some degree at a CARICOM level in terms of the Transportation Commission and this whole desire to have ferries moving cargo vehicles and people up and down the islands, right? And we've been talking about it for quite a while. And I remember the officials from the People's Republic of China, they were very keen in participating in even providing the ferries and so forth. But they said that they can't do that unless equally we had the right berthing facilities to match these ferries. And I'm hearing the talk more and more that these ferries could become a reality, especially even since the Liberation Day of April 2nd. I don't know if some folks may remember Liberation Day in the White House Rose Garden. But so I'm just asking, in the context of that, whether or not what provisions are being made for possible ferry services with inter-island
When you say
transportation.
inter-island, you're speaking about regionally.
Regional, as far
Regional.
south as Guyana and
Yes.
Suriname, and coming right up and through the Eastern Caribbean.
Okay, so when we refer to the port modernization project, we usually use phase one after it, and I know we probably shorten it and we've just been saying port modernization project. But the reason why there was phase one after that was the fact that there is supposed to be a phase two of this project, which will include the terminals and berthing facilities for the inter-Grenadine Island as well as the inter-regional ferry system, and that's supposed to accommodate cargo as well. And we have started the planning of that, and we're in the conceptualizations. We have plans.
Yes.
Because all of this was developed while we were developing this component of the project. So we are already in the process of planning the ferry terminal to accommodate the regional ferries and the cargo as well as passengers. So that work is ongoing.
Phase two.
Phase two.
It's
The vision.
all part of the port
The vision.
modernization.
The
The vision
and commitment.
Yeah,
Yes.
but all part of the port modernization program.
program.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, again, just to remind our listeners, I'm attending two different things. The number to call is 457-9997. 9997. WhatsApp or straight. If you have a question for Minister Brown or Linsky, or if you just want to make a comment on the presentation this morning, or if you want to make a suggestion. We now have a call. Take this one. Good afternoon. Welcome to the program.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon to you.
The question. Is it reasonable to say that the erection of the port, the construction of the port, will put extra burden on the present drainage system of Kingstown, and what is being done? Because
That's your
we see that
question.
even
But
when-
you want to know about that. So I'm going to turn over to Linsky, let him respond to you.
Thank you very much.
All right, then. Thanks for calling.
The construction of the port is not putting any extra burden on the drainage system in Kingstown for two reasons. One, it will be draining itself away from the city, and two, it's at the end pretty much. So we have ensured that the channels have been restored. The drainage would be facilitated. So, for example, that drain that comes through Korea's Little Tokyo, that has been diverted around the port footprint. All of the drains that are in Higginson Street and also McCoy Street, those are in the process of being integrated also. And then you have the drainage into the North River. The challenge with drainage in and around Kingstown, as I understand it, and based from recent experience, especially based on what Braxa has done recently on that very McCoy Street, has to do with litter, where you have a lot of plastics and bottles and garbage.
But the question is, it will not affect negatively.
No, it will not.
All right.
But,
so that's the
yeah.
question that he asked.
Understand.
Yeah. All right.
May I just slip in a sentence?
Yes, go ahead.
A segue. As you mentioned Brax a short while ago, and I'm just saying maybe, Brax also has an important role to play in the development of the infrastructure of Kingstown and St. Vincent Grenadines. It would be good to have Braxa on the Israel program as well at some point in the future.
Well, you're here and you know Braxa, so it's over to you. I'm going to read this WhatsApp message, but there's a call coming in, so I'll take the call before I read the message. Good afternoon, Kojo. Greetings.
Yeah, good day. I know I listened to the minister and she was saying about phase 1 and phase 2. And phase 2 is supposed to be the portion that deals with the cultural aspect. But she has a timeline of when that second phase probably will start, or how soon. That's my question.
Minister, are you able?
I think phase 2, well, in that point I was speaking to phase 2 about the ferry terminal and that, but I think he's talking more about the planning of the space uptown.
Yes. Oh, I see.
Yeah.
So Kojo, he's still online. So Kojo, what aspect of are you talking about?
The cultural phase. That's what.
Okay. Yeah. So we are doing the preliminary work for that. We have sent out RFPs and we've had requests for proposal from over 30 companies who are interested in helping us redevelop Kingstown and that area. But we are definitely starting the work on that, and we have started the work on it, so I can say that it's ongoing right now.
Okay,
Kojo.
Okay, because I think that Kingstown need a little nightlife, so that's why I was
all right.
that question.
You want to come home and bring American style life, yeah.
No,
all right, Kojo.
All right.
Thanks for calling. Have a good day. All right. I was just about to read a couple of comments. It says, good afternoon, gentlemen and lady. That was a superb presentation on the port project from Linsky. Very useful information, clear, precise, and on point. Excellent stuff. Top professional. That's what somebody said.
Thank you.
Yes. And there's one more. Somebody saying, good afternoon all, and congrats on another interesting program. The lady who called about the engineering setback and mentioned the Dubai project is correct. Maybe if some of the persons who are being negatively critical of this should watch the program Mega Structures on YouTube, then they will understand that this failure is not something that is unique to this project. So that's a comment from this person. And I think that's it for now. Yes. So the number to call is 457-9997. That's WhatsApp as well as straight if you wish to engage.
Well, While
Yes,
we wait
yes,
for callers,
yes,
I
Lindsay.
just want to make sure that the minister and myself, we do not forget to mention the fact that part of the port modernization project is the purchase of port equipment.
Oh, that's true.
I was coming to that, and
Okay, great.
That is very
but
true.
yes, elaborate.
Yeah, well, as the public would be reminded, the government would have stood the guarantee for the Port Authority to purchase the port operational equipment.
Give us a sense of what equipment.
Yeah, the container handling units, cranes, trailers, forklifts, and others. That process, based on the report of the CEO of the port, has been going smoothly. We anticipate those equipment.
Sorry to interrupt, but
It's okay.
good afternoon. Welcome to the program.
Good afternoon, Mr. Brian and the other panelists there. My question is whether or not at the completion of the port, whether you be able to take two tourist ships or two cargo ships at the same time.
Can you?
I can answer yes.
Yes. All right. Can you stay offline so Linsky would answer you? All right. Thanks for calling.
The current port is not being built specifically to accommodate cruise. However, in the future, operational adjustments can be made. With regards to the vessels that can boat along, the current port has a quay wall of 380 meters, which can take alongside two 120-meter long vessels at the same time. So we can accommodate, for example, the car boat and geese, the car boat and tropical, maybe three vessels the size of geese and so on. And that would depend on the vessel scheduling, obviously. Yes.
All right.
Yeah. So I was saying to
no, just just making sure the caller follow what you. Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, you were saying.
Yeah, I was saying with regards to the equipment. Yeah. So based on the report of the CEO of the port, those equipment will be here by the, before the end of the construction, in time for the operations. The crane in particular has already been manufactured and is actually in storage.
Hold your point. We're coming back. Good afternoon. Welcome to the program.
Hello, good afternoon, my brother.
Good afternoon to
Let
you.
me just say, political.
No, look, first of all, shift from your device that you're listening to.
Yes, let me just say hello to all the panelists.
Yes, before you do that, hello. We are having a feedback from you, so just move us slightly from where you are.
Yes. Hearing better now, right?
Yes, that's much better. Go ahead.
Yeah, let me just say hello to all the panelists and everybody on the board, all respectable people. No, you see,
step in. Is this step in? Is the person step in?
Yeah, but now is that only just step in.
All right, that's good. That's good. I'm glad.
Right. I want a song dangerous like the opposition side.
Well, I don't want you to song dangerous, period. No. I don't want you to song dangerous, period. But go on, make your point.
I talk with them because it's in media night just because of truth.
Nah.
And I want to go one thing that they honestly talk about this on this radio. I want to dispose that and tell a guy listening now because you see that he had a challenge all of that to bring Mr. Friday and tap it. Why did they invite Mr. Friday and tap this radio station? And when I hear that, it popped me and it lies radio because I know that many times all of sending out invitation for Mr. Friday and Mr. Friday making excuse and all kind of things. And that was fair for you to say in analyze radio that all ain't giving Friday a chance and all kind of thing like that.
No, the last invitation. The last invitation. In fact, I spoke with Mr. Friday last year. I invited Mr. Friday. So let's clarify that and move on. That's it. Let's move on.
Yes. Well, I don't know if it's some people like hypnotize them or get them keep good thing because. It's something like a port. And you expect everything to be perfect. But you yourself ain't perfect. If a port building, a disaster take place and some little thing happen, that's not really detrimental exactly to the whole project. Why should you live on that? Why should you feel on that? Why should you get other people to try to get other people to be against that? That is part of why I can't understand certain black people.
No. Stay away from Hear me. That thing don't go well with me. Stay away from the whether it's black or whoever it is. Just say if you want to say people. Sorry, don't go well with me.
some people individual.
Yeah.
Because when they put, why taking all these things? Why taking all these things? Even when something happened to deliver a country, help out a country, take out a property, bring pride to you. You know, you just can't best work for the life so because God, I work for the look to something so because God is the one that gave me blessing. And I go tell, let me just say this before I go out, Vincent Chan, if people in the world, I telling you, if you get up this morning, you get up in health and strength, you do what you want to do, you say what you want to say, you curse what you want to curse, you go your mighty way, it might be disciplined, I'll tell you something. A little shake, because the health and you're good, a little shake in the hospital make you turn a saint. Just a little shake, a toothache. So our intention, if you don't want to go directly to God, ask God about the problem. If you're going right, are you doing the right things? Are you saying the right things? And you're going to end up in the right way. Just ask God to come in and tell you what to do. My Lord, just ask the Lord what you're doing wrong. And he will lead you from the party. So you're not going to no church and no pastor, nobody to tell you them kind of thing. You just ask God. And he order my voice. Ask God if you're doing the right thing.
All right.
If what you're doing is right.
All right,
so
step
brother,
in.
you have a good day.
You too.
Yes.
Have a good day. Thanks for calling. Somebody has sent a WhatsApp message saying, great job, Linsky. You did a great job explaining the project and in particular the issue with the clutching of the piles.
Thanks.
So I think we were talking about the port equipment. We went to Parliament and we would have passed the amount first, the guarantee for the port equipment. The port equipment, some are already on site, Linsky.
Yes.
So that shows you that we are visualizing the finish line and we're solidly working towards that.
He said they're in storage. I mean, here in Vinci?
Yeah, some of
they
them
are.
are already here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Yeah.
The crane is in storage, but there are forklifts here, there are container handling units here, etc.
I think we would have gotten the pilot boat recently as well.
The pilot boat?
Yeah.
You're moving fast.
Moving along, yeah.
Yes. But
so a lot of work has gone into the project so far, Cecil.
Well, talking about moving along and moving fast, as you notice that we have Karen, that's a sign that, you know, our accommodation here for this program is basically at the end. So, Linsky, final wrap-up kind of points you would want to share?
Yeah, I'll be very brief. Thank you for having me. I must say that we do appreciate the concern. We acknowledge the concern of the public, and we also appreciate the support that we've been receiving from members of the public also. Trust in the process. This project is going towards its completion and contributing to the wider transformation of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Minister?
I would like to echo your words and once again thank the public for all the support that we have been getting. I would also like to acknowledge yourself and other members of the project implementation unit and all the contractors and all the people who are working towards making this port a reality. I understand and we see your work and we definitely appreciate your work. You would have stated that the site is operational 24 hours a day. This is something that we must applaud and we must understand the sacrifice that goes into that. As I said, this has taken a lot of planning. So even those who are working on this site, their members or their people who would have worked on this project who would have passed on, and we also have to keep them within our memories. Totally take into consideration their contribution. I know Gad Saunders would have been one of those who would have worked on the project. Jeffrey Cato would have worked on this project. And these are
Morris
Slater.
Morris Slater.
Yes, and these are some of the familiar names who would have worked on other big infrastructure projects in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So it's an all-around thank you to everyone. And I look forward to the completion of this project and first opening. And for the new, for the workers of the Port Authority, I'm telling you, get excited, get prepared. You shall be moving and transitioning to this new port quite soon. And I hope you enjoy the new work environment and we are better able to serve the public.
Well,
And then I should also mention that this also goes towards the realization of the plan articulated by the Prime Minister of a many-sided economy and a modern civilization and moving towards that. And we shall be working towards developing the sites that the land that is now presently in the control of the Port Authority, about bringing about service-based industries as well as a cultural revolution, we can call that, in Kingstown. Yes.
All right. So, and let me, as part of this excitement, I just want to say, on behalf of the Consul General, the Office of the Consul General in Toronto, that Invest SVG is coming to Toronto, and the tagline is "Home is where the heart is." They're coming there on Monday, May 10th, between starting at 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. They'll be at the Tropicana Community Services Center at 1385, that's 1385 Huntingwood Drive, Scarborough. You're going to be hearing from somebody from the Bank of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Foreign Affairs, National Properties, and more. And of course, you would be hearing from the featured speaker, the Honorable Camilo Gonzalez, Minister of Finance. And that's a Saturday, by the way. May 10 is a Saturday in May. So make it an effort, make it an evening to be with Invest SVG in Toronto. And this is on behalf of Consul General Huggins, who's asked to do that. All right. In the meantime, Pijan, we've had a good program today.
Yes, very good program. I want to thank our panel this afternoon, especially Lenski. He reminds me of Rudy Matters, who made airport construction sound easy. He's making port construction sound easy also. Congratulations, sir.
And Minister is now, you forget she's now part of our...
I'm a co-host now.
Yes.
Well, I congratulated her already.
Oh, okay. All right. So again, to both of you, thank you very much for being our special guests on the program today. And I'm sure a number of persons will have been enlightened by the presentation from both of you. Thank you very much again, and we wish you all the best going forward. And we look forward to coming to collect our barrel, hopefully for Christmas at the new port. I'm not sure, but I'm just those of us who might be getting a barrel.
I think we should just invite you for a site visit, so it would temper that excitement.
Yeah, I think you need to see
your
it.
team, yes.
You need to see the amount of work, and see the scale of the work in person. It's really jaw-dropping.
All right.
I know people who work at the financial complex and they would look across and they will see things are happening and they've seen over time. But when you're actually there and you see the size and the scale of the work that has gone into it. And before we click off, I just would like to say thank you to API, who have been with us from the beginning, spreading the word. We have weekly programs, port call, and I encourage the public to stay tuned to API to follow for more updates about the port project through that program.
All right, and that's a good way to end. And we want to thank Karen for the assistance as usual, and the expertise that he provides to Easier Hand. And we want to thank the folks at Star FM, Star Radio, and Garifuna Radio for linking with us today. And to all of you, all our listeners and contributors, we say thank you and have a very pleasant Sunday afternoon. My name is Cecil. Good afternoon.